¿Dónde está Melania? Es una pregunta que no solo me hago yo, sino que estoy seguro que ustedes también se la tienen que hacer, ¿verdad? Porque la gente dentro de la Casa Blanca se pregunta esto todos los días. ¿Dónde está la primera dama? Cuando no está vendiendo un libro, bueno, seamos sinceros, un libro de porquería que nadie quiere, o promocionando una película que nadie va a ver y nadie vio, Melania está muy ausente del lado de su esposo. Un nuevo video compartido hace unas noches por un medio de comunicación de MAGA nos dio la mejor idea de dónde podría estar Melania, que es teniendo una aventura, así es, engañando a Donald Trump. Esta fue la opinión de todo internet sobre un video que fue increíblemente extraño, increíblemente inquietante y muy al estilo de Melania. Y sabrán exactamente a qué me refiero cuando digo estilo de Melania cuando entremos en detalle. Pero antes de hacerlo, bueno, siento que tenemos la necesidad de comenzar con el contexto más amplio del caos dentro de la Casa Blanca por la falta de relación entre el presidente y la primera dama. Realmente es lo único que puedo llamarlo y realmente quedó detallado en un extenso informe de Maggie Haberman y Jonathan Swan, con el que quiero comenzar justamente ahora. Se exponen las guerras secretas de territorio de Donald Trump y Melania en la Casa Blanca. El presidente ha sido acusado de competir en contra de su esposa y no en el buen sentido. Se ha expuesto la guerra secreta de territorio por la renovación de Donald Trump y Melania como parte del cambio de imagen extremo del presidente en la Casa Blanca. Los artículos existentes de la Casa Blanca desaparecieron, mientras el presidente redecoraba claramente mientras su esposa estaba fuera de la Casa Blanca, según cambio de régimen dentro de la presidencia imperial de Donald Trump, un libro de próxima publicación de los corresponsales de la Casa Blanca, Maggie Haberman y Jonathan Swan. El libro informa que Donald Trump, de 80 años, legó el dormitorio principal tradicional de la Casa Blanca a su esposa, Melania, de 56 años, y transformó la habitación contigua, conocida como sala de estar del segundo piso, en su propio tocador. Así que Donald Trump y Melania evidentemente no viven juntos. Claro, cuando ella está en Washington, D.C., lo cual es de manera muy irregular. Están literalmente separados. Los hábitos nocturnos del presidente han sido bien documentados y miembros de su administración dicen que sobrevive con un sueño limitado, excepto cuando está en público. Entonces, sabemos que el sueño de Donald Trump es abundante. Y con frecuencia se embarca en rachas de publicaciones llenas de ira en Truth Social. Todo esto a las primeras horas de la mañana. Sin embargo, el libro dice que Donald Trump llenó su nuevo dormitorio individual, su departamento de soltero, por así decirlo, con objetos de oro que habían desaparecido de su ubicación original de la Casa Blanca, incluidos algunos que él mismo transportó desde el pasillo. Los objetos fueron trasladados sigilosamente desde el pasillo del segundo piso hasta el dormitorio del presidente. Esto escribió Haberman y Swan. A veces, el propio Donald Trump llenaba los objetos reorganizando las cosas en los aposentos privados, todo esto a su antojo. Como pueden ver en este pequeño y divertido mapa didáctico, Donald Trump y Melania, aunque están uno al lado del otro, no viven juntos. Y bueno, esto está muy bien documentado que ciertamente no duermen en la misma cama. Melania había seleccionado la decoración durante el primer mandato del presidente, pero como pasó menos tiempo en Washington al comienzo de su segundo mandato, Donald Trump tuvo vía libre para reorganizar las cosas a su propio gusto. De nuevo, Melania nunca está en Washington, D.C. Una vez, cuando el personal le recordó amablemente al presidente que estaba tomando cosas del pasillo central de su esposa, bueno, cosas que su esposa había seleccionado personalmente, él dejó bastante en claro que no le importaba. Escribieron esto algunos autores, retratando algo más parecido a un programa de televisión de telerrealidad sobre los renovadores. El libro dice que Donald Trump parecía estar casi que compitiendo con Melania, decidido a tener la mejor habitación. Eso incluyó mover un espejo con marco de pan de oro que originalmente formaba parte del rediseño de Melania en la habitación de la reina, todo esto en el segundo piso, que ahora ha sido reutilizado fuera de la oficina oval en la columnata, donde la gente lo usa para tomarse selfies. La redecoración del presidente generó tal oleada de actividad que el personal en la oficina se sintió atrapado entre los dos Trump, Melania y Donald. Esto lo dice el libro, señalando que el personal de la Casa Blanca intentaba reemplazar los objetos perdidos, enviando fotografías de posibles reemplazos a Melania para su aprobación. Así que sabemos que no hay una relación real, profunda y de rico amor entre Donald Trump y Melania, lo cual es divertido, considerando que estas personas siempre nos están sermoneando sobre los llamados valores familiares. Bueno, valores familiares conservadores. Y luego resulta que no hay familias felices. J.D. Vance, el vicepresidente, acaricia a su esposa de la misma forma que acaricia un perro. Melania realmente ni siquiera existe. Mike Johnson no habla de su esposa, pero sí monitorea el consumo de contenido para adultos que ven sus hijos. Eso es sumamente extraño. Así que no hay parejas felices dentro de MAGA. Pero bueno, Lindsey Graham y su esposa, antes de que fallecieran, esperen un segundo. Lindsey Graham no tenía esposa. Entienden a lo que voy, ¿verdad? Bueno, en realidad no tanto. Y supongo que no pueden oírme, pero entienden mi punto, ¿verdad? No hay parejas felices dentro de MAGA y sin embargo siempre quieren sermonearnos, diciéndonos que tendríamos que tener una pareja como todos, una pareja, como ellos dicen, una pareja conservadora. Pero alguien que parece tener una relación profunda y rica con Melania es su asesor ejecutivo principal, quien apareció en la televisión de la propaganda estatal de MAGA y dijo esto. La reacción de internet es algo con lo que estoy completamente de acuerdo. Miren, por favor.
Joining us today on Bianca Across the Nation. Welcome in, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
You have such a unique perspective working so closely with the First Lady that we rarely get to see. So I think it's critical we get an understanding about her influence. I just put up that piece about how she says, I want this on the president's desk. It is ambitious. It is also very focused on peace and children. We want to talk about where that goes, especially with this peace letter she gave to Putin. I feel like there's so much more discussion after the NATO summit about a real potential to end this conflict, something close to Melania's heart.
Look, Bianca, I believe that our First Lady, the current First Lady, Melania Trump, is the single most consequential First Lady in history of our nation. You talk about her commitment to children. It's not just with American kids, it's kids all over the place. So, for example, it's fair to argue that she has had more impact, substantive impact, as it relates to the peace process between Ukraine and Russia by single-handedly executing on 4 reunifications between Ukrainian and Russian children and their families. What more substantive has occurred? If you look at everything that NATO has done, all of the world leaders, they continue to attack. We see drone attacks every single day, more weapons going forward. But our First Lady has reunified these individuals 4 times now, and she's working on a 5th. It's pretty important.
Así que después de todo este desastre de rareza, recibimos muchas respuestas. Emma, de Marjorie Report, intervino. Se están acostando. Sí, definitivamente parece que Melania tiene una relación con este tipo porque otra razón darías esa respuesta. Jen Psaki, quien está tan perturbada como cualquiera, intervino diciendo, mientras ven esto, recuerden que alguien pensó que esto tenía sentido decirlo en voz alta y en televisión, realmente no lo tiene. Esto es sumamente extraño. Otro usuario de Twitter lo resumió todo escribiendo, jajaja, asesor principal, eso es una clave para referirse al distractor de Melania, tipo el chico de la piscina o el profesor de tenis, ¿verdad? Melania es tan primera dama de paz como Donald Trump es el presidente de la paz. Simplemente no es verdad. ¿Cómo es ella trascendental? Realmente no lo entiendo. La declaración más grande de Melania como primera dama fue usar una chaqueta que decía, no me importa. Así que no me importa y no le importa el trabajo evidentemente. Ciertamente quiere beneficiarse del trabajo, bueno, de la presidencia de su esposo, por una suma de decenas de millones de dólares. Quiere asegurarse de que Barron Trump, su bebé ancla, porque por cierto, bueno, inmigrante legal, eso es lo que es Melania, pueda beneficiarse de la información de transacciones con información privilegiada que le da su padre. Pero aparte de eso, ¿ha contribuido Melania al país? ¿Puede alguien detallarme cómo? No. Así que probablemente que este asesor principal, que tiene una opinión tan alta de ella y con quien pasa mucho tiempo, recuerden, esta fue una de las personas que sabía sobre el gran anuncio de los archivos de Melania, que bueno, hizo hace un par de meses, pero su esposo no sabía. Qué interesante, ¿no? Muy interesante que este sea el tipo que ella ha elegido para ser su asesor principal, y entonces la reacción de todos fue, ya saben, la misma que la mía, y estoy seguro de que también la de ustedes. Es como que parece que algo está pasando ahí, ¿verdad? Algo está pasando entre Donald Trump y Melania. Habitaciones separadas, Melania nunca pasa con su esposo, Donald Trump tiene a Natalie Hark, Melania tiene a este tipo. No tiene sentido esto, ¿verdad? Porque ciertamente no hay nada ocurriendo entre ellos. Jen Psaki ofreció su teoría sobre la falta de relaciones entre Donald Trump y Melania, lo cual creo que es muy importante para lo que su asesor principal significa para su relación, porque tú trabajaste en el documental de Melania, la película de Melania, y él lo defendió como algo fantástico, este tipo, ¿de acuerdo? Entonces, ¿por qué Melania hizo esto? Esto es lo que le habló a Jennifer Welch. Miren, por favor.
You have to realize this. This is something that's super important. Melania got paid $40 million to do a piece of shit documentary, unwatchable, right? And in that documentary, nothing is done by accident. It's all intentional, it's all purposeful. This is what I want to project to the public that is my image. She went out of her way to let the American public know that she does not have sex with her husband. They said goodnight. He went one way to one bedroom. She went one way to another bedroom. America 10 years ago, if Michelle got $40 million while she was in office, that would be a scandal. But of course, nobody does anything with that. And then if she said goodnight, Barack, and she turned and she won it intentionally, that's by design, that's purposeful. That was left in, that wasn't edited out. It was staged accordingly. She wanted the public to know, I do not have sex with this man. And I think that if you look back to Trump's past, if you look to his mentor, Rory Cohn, who was homosexual, closeted for a very long time, very influential on Trump's life. I think the reason that MAGA men are so obsessed with the LGBTQ plus community is some of them are bisexual, some of them are closeted, because I can't even begin to tell you how many gay friends I have that do not talk about gay stuff like the Republicans do. I've never seen a man constantly, as Donald Trump, every time he's around somebody attractive, that he seems to have a type. You know, think about Zoran, think about that UFC fighter, think about the Saudi print, all of them. He seems to have and he can't stop himself, because if you think back to like the times you visited an elderly person in the nursing home, they get really honest. They get in their deathbed confession era, and it would be like, oh, your grandmother would be like, oh, Jack, you know, I always loved you a lot more than I did your brother. You were my favorite.
Don't
right?
tell Joey that.
And this is what Trump is doing. He can't help himself because he's less inhibited. He knows his own mortality is coming into focus. And I don't think he and Melania have slept together for years, but she took in $40 million, and it wasn't to curate a traditional marriage. It wasn't to curate a traditional family. It did the exact opposite. And this is the kind of stuff and the type of fodder that the MAGA conservatives, like, you know, little Moses Mike, would have a heyday about. Ted Cruz would go bananas if Barack and Michelle did something like this. They don't even sleep. What kind of man doesn't sleep with his wife? And I don't know if maybe we should just start talking about that all the time. Seriously, I really think we should.
Definitivamente no están juntos. Creo que Jim Psaki tiene toda la razón. Y sí, estas son las personas que no sermonean sobre los valores familiares, son hipócritas, son mentirosos. Es todo lo que vemos dentro de MAGA y nadie, en serio, nadie se sorprende jamás. Pero creo que deberíamos denunciarlos más por ello. Creo que deberíamos señalar el hecho de que estas no son familias felices, que los valores conservadores son simplemente los valores de pisotear a otras personas. Y cuando trabajas tan duro solo para beneficiarte a ti mismo, tal vez, bueno, no le agradas a la gente, y cuando también trabajes tan duro para asegurarte de que los multimillonarios estén felices, a ellos tampoco les va a importar. Realmente no les interesa tu vida, ¿correcto? Donald Trump dijo que iba a devolver la unidad familiar tradicional. ¿Cómo? Haciendo que comprar una casa sea inasequible, que los alimentos cuesten lo mismo. ¿Saben por qué MAGA está tan molesto con eso de, las mujeres ya no están en el hogar? En primer lugar, la gente puede hacer lo que quiera. En segundo lugar, han hecho que el cuidado infantil sea completamente inasequible. Y cuando Zohran Mamdani se aseguró de que los neoyorquinos tuvieran acceso a él, lo llamaron comunismo. Suben los precios de los alimentos, la gente no puede comer, la gente no puede vivir. ¿De qué están hablando? Todo es, bueno, una basura. Pero no les importa porque mientras que ellos estén felices, no les interesa lo demás. Melania puede tener su pequeña aventura secreta, su pequeño amante especial. Donald Trump puede tener a Natalie Harp, puede coquetear con hombres todo el día. Porque sí, hemos escuchado a Donald Trump decir varias veces, wow, qué hermosas piernas tiene este hombre, qué grandes piernas y musculosas. Eso es lo que le gusta hacer a Donald Trump, así que realmente no se preocupan por el pueblo. Donald Trump está en un profundo declive cognitivo y físico, y todo el mundo lo sabe. Todos en la Casa Blanca saben que el hombre tiene demencia. Todos en el cuerpo de prensa de la Casa Blanca saben que Donald Trump está mal, pero lo más importante es que cada uno de los senadores republicanos que permiten que Donald Trump los mangonee, que siempre dicen, sí señor, y agachan la cabeza, son conscientes de su demencia. ¿Saben qué? Ninguna de estas personas, ninguno de los miembros del personal de la Casa Blanca, ninguno de los miembros del cuerpo de prensa de la Casa Blanca y ciertamente ninguno de esos senadores y miembros de la Cámara de Representantes republicanos van a decir nada en este momento. Pero muchos meses, tal vez años después, lo harán. Dirán, saben, siempre estuve preocupado por eso, siempre lo supe, debí haber dicho algo, pero no lo van a hacer ahora porque son unos cobardes que no tienen columna vertebral. Sin embargo, acaban de quedar sumamente expuestos. Lo que los senadores republicanos verdaderamente saben sobre el declive cognitivo de Donald Trump, sobre su demencia, acaba de ser expuesto por un senador, pero antes de llegar a eso, quiero empezar con lo que Rick Wilson tuvo que decir antes de pasar a cómo el senador ha expuesto accidentalmente la demencia de Donald Trump.
What is going on in your mind with the geriatric presidency?
Look, there are two gigantic cover-ups in Washington happening right now. The Epstein cover-up is the mega cover-up. That's the cover-up of all cover-ups. But the other cover-up is that the White House staff knows, the Secret Service knows, the Trump family knows, all Trump's political staff know, and the mainstream media covering Trump in the White House know that he is in a terminal decline. He is not well. He is not healthy. He is not mentally there at all anymore. There's a reason why he's, why he confuses people all the time and goes off on tangents and falls asleep. He's dying. Let's be real about it. Donald Trump is dying. I don't know what is the thing killing him other than old age and obesity, but this is not even the guy that ran for president in 24, to say nothing of the guy that ran for president in 2020 or 2016. He is a very diminished figure. He clearly has health problems, all the scabs and the bruises and all the weird bleeding, all of it should be top story, front and center every day, New York Times, Washington Post,
Yes.
Politico, everywhere else. But as you point out, they don't want to lose their access to the White House. They don't want to lose their access to Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita and Stephen Miller and Catherine Levitt whispering secrets in their ears that they want to dump out there. And so we're watching him rot and fall apart in real time, and these people are pretending there's nothing wrong. It is, as for the journalists who know what's going on or who see it closer than we do, they do not report it with the sufficiency I would argue that legitimate editorial interests would demand. Some of them, I think, are being told, you may not cover this.
Todo el mundo sabe que este es el caso. Y por eso, el hecho de que no digan nada es despreciable, es asqueroso, es lo que está mal dentro de la política y algunas personas no lo hacen porque quieren proteger su escaño, quieren proteger sus intereses o tal vez, no lo sé, Jake Tapper quiere escribir un libro sobre ello en un par de años más adelante. ¿Quién sabe, verdad? Porque todavía están hablando de Joe Biden, todavía están tratando de vender su libro, pero a Donald Trump, ¿de quién dijo? Oh, quiero ser casi normal para ti, querido líder, quiero ser tan bueno para ti, Donald. Donald, quiero ser un mejor hombre para ti. Si tan solo pudiera ser un mejor hombre para ti, es en serio. ¿Sería yo sincero e íntegro como periodista, que se supone que debe de pedirte cuentas, pero me niego a hacerlo? Gran trabajo, Jake. Gran trabajo audicionando para Barry Weiss y Larry Ellison. Es simplemente como un comportamiento repugnante y de tontos, de hecho, por parte de Jake Tapper, pero todos estos periodistas ahora están al tanto de ello y no hacen su trabajo, lo descuidan, no les importa y los dejan colgados, y especialmente en una época en la que periodistas independientes como Brian Taylor Cohen y David Pakman, que deberías de ver como un distintivo de honor hacerlos. Sin embargo, ellos no lo hacen. Pero detrás de escena, créanme que están charlando de ello, y el senador demócrata Jon Ossoff, quien ha sido objeto de ataques de Donald Trump, simplemente salió y lo dijo. Salió y dijo no solo lo que los republicanos estaban pensando, sino lo que Donald Trump está pensando debido a su declive cognitivo. Un demócrata revela lo que los senadores de MAGA realmente dicen sobre Donald Trump. Jon Ossoff dijo que los comentarios públicos de los republicanos apoyando al presidente pueden ser engañosos. Ha revelado que la mayoría de los republicanos en el Congreso piensan que Donald Trump ha perdido el juicio. Ha perdido el juicio por completo. El cerebro de ese hombre ya no funciona y va a arrasar y va a arrastrar a todo su partido hacia abajo en las elecciones de medio término. Jon Ossoff, un hombre de 39 años, senador demócrata, y puedo decir que se ve bastante bien con esa edad, convocó a una conferencia de prensa en el Capitolio hace unos días para abordar lo que se espera que sea parte del discurso del presidente en horario estelar en 2 días. La afirmación infundada de que la victoria electoral de Jon Ossoff en el 2020 fue ilegítima, al igual que la de su colega senador de Georgia, Raphael Warnock. A Jon Ossoff se le pidió que comentara sobre los legisladores republicanos que están de acuerdo con que Donald Trump siga en el camino. Y dijo, lo que verdaderamente creen detrás de escenas es que Donald Trump ha perdido el juicio, que está aplastando a su partido y que su cerebro ya no piensa nada bien. También hizo comentarios similares hace unas semanas. Miren, por favor.
Real quick, what do you make of Donald Trump's sort of cognitive decline at the G7? He's been saying all kinds of crazy things.
The president has been humiliated on the world stage. And many Americans are increasingly concerned about his stability and his capacity in the office. It's deeply distressing to Americans across the political spectrum to see a president so incompetent and so incapable, attempting and failing to represent the nation internationally.
Jon Ossoff tiene toda la razón, tanto en su diagnóstico sobre Donald Trump, como también al decir y estar dispuesto a decir que Donald Trump está en un punto profundo, muy profundo, de su declive cognitivo, que cada republicano lo sabe y que cada republicano simplemente está escondiéndose, está asustado de esa verdad. La verdad que nos pone a todos en peligro, pero estas son las personas a las que no les interesa esto. Solo quieren servirse a sí mismos. Y me alegra que Jon Ossoff esté dejando este punto especialmente claro. Que Donald Trump vive en una realidad alternativa cuando está, como mencionó el artículo, a punto de dar un discurso, a punto de dar este mensaje de horario estelar, que por cierto los medios de comunicación no deberían de cubrir a menos que, y voy a decir esto, a menos que estén dispuestos a refutar y rebatir todo lo que diga Donald Trump, y cualquiera que cubra este asunto en vivo también, creo que tiene que aprovechar la oportunidad para señalar el hecho de que Donald Trump está en un profundo declive cognitivo y que ni una sola cosa de las que diga debe de tomarse en serio. Hay que entender que Donald Trump, gracias a este declive cognitivo, vive en una realidad alternativa, está tratando de desafiar los resultados electorales del 2020, volviendo a litigar lo que ya ha sido resuelto porque está muy desconectado de la realidad. Esa es la única razón por la que, bueno, debería de haber estado hablando de todo esto. Así que me alegra que el senador Jon Ossoff haya aprovechado la oportunidad para decir, sí, los republicanos saben que Donald Trump tiene demencia, saben que ha perdido el juicio, saben que está loco de remate ahí arriba, que el cerebro ya no piensa nada bien. Me alegra que esté señalando eso, porque también está diciendo de manera muy directa, mis colegas son unos cobardes, es decir, se niegan a hacer su trabajo y a enfrentarse a este loco, cuyo cerebro no funciona, pero eso es lo que Donald Trump va a hacer ahora. Va a decir que las elecciones son ilegítimas, va a usar esto como una forma de catapultar su negación por las elecciones de medio término porque sabe lo que se viene después y parte de lo que se viene después es una victoria aplastante para el senador demócrata Jon Ossoff. Por eso, cada vez que hablo de Jon Ossoff, lo digo como que si fuéramos amigos. La verdad, me encantaría conocer a este tipo de personas, a este tipo de políticos, que yo confío bastante en que buscan un cambio real para el país. Quiero que vean lo que Jamie Raskin está denunciando que tiene que ver con la ley Safe America y con Lindsey Graham. Miren, por favor.
Any credible new evidence that could emerge that the 2020 election was stolen?
No, this is pure fantasy, of course. He lost the election by more than 7 million votes to Joe Biden, who beat him 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. There are 60 different federal and state court decisions, including by 7 or 8 judges who he appointed to the bench, rejecting every claim of electoral fraud and corruption. There was an effort in 2016 of foreign forces, specifically Vladimir Putin, to interfere in our election, and there was overwhelming evidence brought forward by our intelligence agencies, and Donald Trump rejected that overwhelming evidence. He was the one who did it, and then he openly invited foreign forces to do the same thing in 2020. In any event, we've got safe free and fair elections in America, and that's what troubles Donald Trump. He wants to try to provoke and manufacture a crisis here that doesn't exist. And at least the reporting suggests that he's going to be pinning it all on China. Well, you can find dozens of references by Donald Trump to President Xi, how he's right out of central casting. He's brilliant. He controls more than 1 billion people with an iron thumb. The authoritarians do it the best. They're brilliant. They're first rate. They're first class. I mean, come on. It's very clear that he envies the authoritarian and totalitarian leaders of the world, especially the communists like Kim Jong-un, who's his favorite correspondent, who he sends love letters back and forth to. So that's the kind of society that he wants. But the good news is that the vast majority of Americans across the political spectrum are standing up for our democracy and our freedom and our free and fair elections.
Yeah, Congressman Raskin, you just mentioned something I wanted to bring up, which is that it was not long ago that President Trump actually invited foreign interference in our elections. He said that in 2019, essentially saying, well, in a scenario, hey, if there's some type of interference I'd like to know about, I'd like to hear what they say. So the fact that he's coming full circle now and thinking that foreign interference is some horrific thing wasn't that long ago where he wanted it as long as it helped him. All that being said, I'd like to bring the conversation over to Todd Blanche, and as he continues to move through the Senate in an effort to become Attorney General. It's now come to light that he has really been in charge of a significant program inside the White House to weaponize the Department of Justice. The New York Times talks about it like this. Emails show Blanche's role in Trump's retribution campaign. Todd Blanche oversaw senior Justice Department officials pursuing politically charged investigations, convening reoccurring meetings of the so-called weaponization working group, and committed departmental resources to advancing President Trump's efforts targeting political opponents, election administration, and other high-profile vendettas, said Chioma Chukwu, executive director of the American Oversight, which obtained the documents through a FOIA. Talk about how dangerous Todd Blanche is if he were to become the permanent acting attorney general.
Well, it's very clear that he views himself as Donald Trump's personal lawyer and a political lawyer at that. I mean, take the Epstein files, where he oversaw the production of the Epstein files, and he repeatedly failed to redact the names of Epstein victims that were supposed to be redacted. And then he has concealed around 2 million documents, refused to release and produce 2 million documents that were required by federal statute, by the law that we passed in Congress.
Todos, y me refiero a todos en el Partido Demócrata y también cualquiera con algo de sentido común, necesitan denunciar esto, y me alegra que el congresista Jamie Raskin lo esté haciendo. Se está desatando un caos absoluto, mientras que Irán responde con contraataques y contraataca con fuerza tras más bombardeos estadounidenses ordenados por Donald Trump hace unas noches. Irán está golpeando con fuerza en Kuwait, en Bahrein y en otras naciones árabes circundantes, donde hay bases militares de Estados Unidos. Quiero que vean estas imágenes increíbles de impactos directos de drones Shahed iraníes golpeando con fuerza en Kuwait hace unos días. Miren, por favor. Tenemos este video aquí de algunos impactos directos en Jordania. Como pueden ver, estos interceptores estadounidenses, estos interceptores Patriots entregados a Jordania, no están funcionando, mientras que Irán contraataca en Jordania. Miren, por favor. Ahora, Irán también ha publicado imágenes de video de sus Shahed, sus drones, mejor dicho, de sus misiles balísticos que están lanzando, mientras que Donald Trump dice que Irán ya no tiene armas, ya no tiene marina. Esto es lo que dice Donald, que ni siquiera tiene misiles. Miren las imágenes que publica Irán. Ahora, como señalé, en estos días han habido, sirenas sonando sobre Bahrein, aunque algunas de esas sirenas ya ni siquiera funcionan. Lo mismo en Kuwait, lo mismo en Jordania, lo mismo en los Emiratos Árabes Unidos, en ciertas áreas de Omán también y en Qatar. Comparto esto con ustedes aquí. Miren este mapa de las bases militares de Estados Unidos atacadas por Irán solo durante los últimos, 5 días. Y cuando echan un vistazo en el mapa de algunos de los daños que han causado, los medios iraníes han publicado imágenes de satélites de la destrucción de las bases aéreas en Estados Unidos, en Kuwait, en Qatar, en Bahrein, en los Emiratos Árabes Unidos y también en algunas otras naciones. Y aquí hay un mapa de algunos de estos ataques. Compartiré esto con ustedes para que lo puedan ver. Un impacto directo en Jordania por parte de Irán. Estas son imágenes de hace un rato del buque de carga del Gran Leoni que fue alcanzado por Irán antes. Pueden verlo. Miren este rollo de apoyo, por favor. Aquí lo pueden ver hundiéndose, o más bien hundiéndose en el estrecho de Hormuz tras una fractura del casco que hizo que se partiera en dos cerca de Bandar Andaz. Además, Irán también logró atacar un barco naval en Kuwait. El CENTCOM emitió la siguiente declaración. Durante los últimos 7 días, Irán ha atacado intencionalmente a civiles en toda la región mediante agresiones a 7 buques comerciales, lo que ha provocado que casi una docena de tripulantes civiles resultaran fallecidos. Y los que no perdieron la vida quedaron gravemente heridos. Las fuerzas iraníes también han lanzado decenas de misiles y drones hacia los países vecinos del Golfo. Las fuerzas estadounidenses están respondiendo a Irán como una agresión injustificada que sigue poniendo en peligro vidas inocentes. Aunque Donald Trump dice que Irán no tiene armas y que, están suplicando por un trato, hace unos días Donald Trump estuvo en el medio de comunicación del régimen estatal conocido como Fox y Donald Trump le dijo al presentador que lo estaba entrevistando que Irán lo contactó. En ese día dijo que fue hace una hora y que dijeron que quieren hacer un trato desde ahora. Necesitan hacer un trato supuestamente. Esto fue lo que dijo Donald Trump. Miren por favor.
3 days ago we had a deal.
When was the last time you spoke with an Iranian official?
Well, not me, but let's say my representatives. I have spoken to them, but my representatives over the course of, actually, an hour ago.
And what message was delivered?
They want to make a deal, but every time they make a deal, they break it. They don't want to die. People don't want to die. About an hour ago.
And what message was delivered?
You better make a deal. You're not going to have anybody left. We're being very careful with the civilian population, as you know, but I said, you better make a deal. You're not going to have anything left.
And you think they will?
They should. I don't know if they will or not.
Sir, thank you for speaking with Fox News.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ahora, en esta entrevista que Donald Trump acaba de dar hace unos días, Donald Trump dice, los vamos a golpear muy duro, vamos a seguir golpeándolos duro y la próxima semana vamos a ir detrás de sus centrales eléctricas, sus puentes y sus otras infraestructuras civiles. Vamos a ir tras todos ellos. Esto es lo que dice Donald Trump. Volvemos a esto otra vez, amenazando con destruir la civilización iraní y luego diciendo que ellos realmente quieren desesperadamente hacer un trato. Esto es lo que Donald Trump le dijo al medio del régimen estatal cuando se ven los contraataques de Irán. Miren, por favor.
Do you anticipate that the strikes were seen this week against Iran will expand? Are you considering hitting energy targets or other locations inside of Iran?
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. But we're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
Luego Donald Trump dice que hemos golpeado la isla de Hark muy duro, 2 veces, incluso 3, y Donald Trump afirma que ha destruido toda la isla de Yark, aparte de un área de 25 yardas donde está el petróleo. Y luego Donald Trump dice, entonces podríamos ir y podríamos invadir si quisiéramos la isla Yark, además de destruir los puentes, la electricidad, las centrales eléctricas, las carreteras y otras infraestructuras civiles. Miren el clip, por favor.
You posted today on True Social comments that you made back in 1988 about Karg Island. And at the time you said, 1 bullet shot at one of our men or ships, and I'd do a number on Karg Island, I'd go in and take it.
Yeah.
Do you still intend to take Karg Island?
So I can't say that to you because if I did, it would be foolish, right? But it'd be nice to make a little headlines, but it would be foolish. But I'll tell you about Karg Island. So we've already...
Are you ruling out a ground campaign in a limited
Well,
capacity.
I don't want to say that either, but I would say no if I thought it was appropriate. I'd say sometimes you need a ground campaign, but we have other people that will do the ground campaign for us. But we already hit Cargill, as you know, twice. Even 3 times. I said, hit everything but the oil. Just leave that little area from 25 yards out. Leave that little area. Don't touch the oil. Because I don't want that in terms of the world economy. It's a chunk of the world economy. So we haven't hit that. At some point we could, but I think it's unlikely. As far as taking it is concerned, if we degrade them far enough and deep enough back, I would do that.
Donald Trump dice que, aunque estamos siendo muy cuidadosos con la población civil ahora, más vale que, hagas un trato con nosotros, Irán. ¿Me oyes? Más vale que hagas un trato, porque si no lo haces, no nos vamos a contener. Más amenazas de genocidio y crímenes de guerra justo aquí. Mira, por favor.
And what message was delivered?
You better make a deal. You're not going to have anybody left. We're being very careful with the civilian population, as you know, but I said, you better make a deal. You're not going to have anything left.
And you think they will?
They should. I don't know if they will or not.
Sir, thank you for speaking with Fox News.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mientras tanto, sabemos que los Estados Unidos han estado atacando instalaciones petroquímicas, instalaciones de producción de agua mineral y otras estructuras energéticas en Irán. Por ejemplo, un taller de producción de agua mineral en la ciudad de Nushan, en la provincia de Al-Borz, fue atacado. Mientras tanto, tenemos al viceministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Irán, Gharib Abadi. Él apareció en los medios estatales iraníes y dijo que no tenemos ningún interés en hacer un trato con Donald Trump. No nos vamos a acercar a los Estados Unidos para negociar. Sentimos que estamos en una buena posición. Vamos a hacer sufrir toda la economía mundial como resultado de lo que está haciendo Donald Trump. No tenemos ningún deseo de tener discusiones. Esto es lo que el representante de Irán dijo hace unas noches. Miren, por favor.
Iran did not leave the negotiating table. It was America that stalled the Islamabad memorandum, and we, in fact, did not take any action in this regard. So look, the idea that they want Iran to return is a request that will not be realized. The Islamic Republic of Iran will not be the first country to request negotiations in the face of these criminal American actions. We will not request negotiations with America. If America thinks that by tightening its circle of actions against us, military actions, economic sanctions, we will ask to go back and negotiate, it is mistaken.
We are a nation of
definitely.
resistance.
They are mistaken. Secondly, if they think we will widen the Strait of Hormuz, they are mistaken about that too. This is currently a very key capacity. These 2 actions will not happen.
Y luego Donald Trump, en el medio de comunicación del régimen estatal Fox, Donald Trump dice que todo lo que dice Irán es una mentira. Nunca puedes confiar en ellos. Siguen cambiando de opinión todos los días. Lo único que hacen es mentir. Esto es lo que dice Donald. Miren, por favor.
They said they didn't want a nuclear weapon.
Well, they say that. Everything they say is a lie. They lie. I've never seen anything like it. They also come out and they'll tell you we never discussed nuclear, and we're in a room for 5 hours. That's all we discussed. And they'll walk out and say, nuclear was not discussed. Everything was discussed.
Luego Donald Trump dice, hey, no tienen ninguna otra opción que hacer un trato conmigo. ¿Me oyen? Miren, por favor.
Do you believe the Iranians are serious about making a deal?
I think they have no choice.
Why haven't they yet?
I think if I didn't do the way I'm doing, they would never make a deal. They would have never made a deal with Obama. That deal was the worst deal. What they did sign was a worthless piece of paper.
Ahora, estamos de vuelta con este bucle en el que estábamos hace, ¿qué? 4 meses, donde Donald Trump decía que íbamos a destruir a la civilización, que destruiremos los puentes, que vamos a invadir, que vamos a hacer todo eso, o más vale que hagas un trato con nosotros, o vamos a crear un genocidio. Sabemos que Irán no va a responder a eso. Además, Donald Trump sigue mintiendo y dice que controla el estrecho de Hormuz y que Irán no tiene un ejército. Acaba de ver ahí que Irán sí tiene un ejército y que está golpeando objetos muy cercanos y los está golpeando muy duro. Y les mostraré solo algunas de estas imágenes de satélite también. Creo que hay algo importante en lo que debemos de concentrarnos. Sé que suena como un disco rayado. Las reservas estratégicas de petróleo siguen alcanzando niveles de emergencia en este punto. Estamos, a punto de experimentar el mayor impacto global en la historia. Los precios del petróleo, el precio del crudo, está volviendo a subir cada vez más por encima de $80, rozando los 85 y 86 dólares por barril. Y esperamos que siga subiendo. Creo que, no dudo que llegue a $90 muy pronto. Donald Trump también afirma que el petróleo está fluyendo como nunca antes. Pero echen un vistazo a este gráfico de aquí. Pueden ver por dónde fluye el petróleo a finales de febrero, antes de que Donald Trump lanzara esta guerra catastrófica, y luego pueden ver dónde estamos hoy. De hecho, sí está fluyendo como nunca antes. Supongo que eso significa que directamente no está fluyendo en absoluto en este momento, ya que Irán controla efectivamente el estrecho de Hormuz. Donald Trump publicó imágenes extrañas de él siendo un lamedor de botas de Xi Jinping. Fotos raras de Donald Trump luciendo como un individuo demente mientras Xi Jinping le señala a Donald Trump a dónde ir. Otra foto de Donald Trump luciendo como un ciervo asustado por los faros de un auto. Todo esto al lado de Xi Jinping. La verdad, llega un punto en el que ya ni siquiera sorprende lo débil que es Donald Trump.
Well, you're back on the goddamn front page now with 2 innocent people gunned down in broad daylight.
De ahí era el congresista demócrata Magazine y no se estaba guardando nada. Y hace unos días vimos a los demócratas en las distintas audiencias ante la Cámara de Representantes de los Estados Unidos y el Senado de los Estados Unidos contraatacar con mucha fuerza ahora que el Congreso finalmente ha regresado a sus sesiones. Permítanme mostrarles lo que pasó, y quiero compartir esto con ustedes mientras el senador demócrata Jack Reed interrogaba a los jueces de la Corte Suprema que testificaron hace unos días en el Senado de los Estados Unidos, y aquí el senador Reed les lee a estos jueces de la Corte Suprema, quienes testificaban para intentar obtener más dinero para la Corte Suprema, destinado a su propia seguridad personal, las palabras de Donald Trump y les decía, se dan cuenta de que esta es una de las principales razones por las que su tribunal y tantos jueces en todo el país enfrentan amenazas graves. Miren, por favor.
I want to pick up on a point that Senator Collins made about some outrageous statements that are being made by public figures, and I can't think of a more prominent one than the President of the United States. So on February 20th, following the decision on tariffs, he said, disgrace to our nation, fools, lapdogs for the rhinos and radical left Democrats, and very unpatriotic and disloyal to the Constitution. And he was describing the Supreme Court. On March 15, he posted, our country was unnecessarily ransacked by the United States Supreme Court, which has become little more than a weaponized and an unjust political organization. Now, I don't agree with anything he said, but if there's anyone in the country that commands more attention, it's the president, and I think that behavior is very dangerous to the court and to our whole system. And I just want that to be part of the record. Justice Kagan, you asked for
if I could, Senator,
please.
Wherever these come from, whatever political figure says them, whatever party that political figure is a member of, these statements are really unhelpful. They're dangerous in terms of individual justices' security, and they're not appropriate in the way to treat a coordinated branch of government. I think that Chief Justice had a year-end statement last year where he talked about this issue, and he talked about criticism is fair game. I mean, go for it. It's life in the big city is that you're subject to all kinds of criticism. But intimidation is a different thing entirely. And when political figures of any stripe are trying to intimidate judges and justices to do things that they like rather than the things that they don't, that's where we really have crossed the line.
I think you're exactly right, Your Honor, and you said it well. You wanted a moment to talk about the process where the $28 million request was made through appropriation channels, and then $30 million appeared suddenly through private channels. Please.
Yeah, I think Justice Barrett referenced this a bit. And first off, we apologize if we did anything so procedurally improper. But the reason for the additional ask, if you will, was that we were suddenly confronted with the loss of U.S. Marshal protection. And we thought that we were going to have U.S. Marshal protection at our residences for another 6 months, and all of a sudden learned from the Justice Department that that was going to be impossible. And so we had to do some sort of quick footwork to try to get additional monies in order to cover that 6-month gap. And as I say, if we did that in a way that was procedurally less than optimal, my apologies.
Well, your security is more important than procedural niceties, so There's no issue here.
A continuación, quiero compartir con ustedes en la Cámara de Representantes al congresista demócrata Pocan interrogando a la administradora de la Administración de Pequeñas Empresas, Kelly Loeffler. Ahora, Kelly Loeffler es una multimillonaria. Ella en realidad odia a las pequeñas empresas y bueno, ese suele ser el criterio de Donald Trump para elegir a alguien en un puesto específico. Elige a un fiscal general que odia la ley, elige a una secretaria de salud que odia la salud, elige a un secretario de energía que, bueno, es corrupto hasta la médula y solo representan los intereses de las compañías petroleras. Elige a una secretaria de salud que odia la salud, como les digo, elige a un jefe de agencia de protección ambiental que odia el medio ambiente y podría seguir hasta terminar con todos. Elige un secretario del Departamento de Defensa y saben que ni siquiera pudo dirigir una organización sin fines de lucro para las tropas. Así que permítanme compartir con ustedes cómo el congresista Pocan acorrala a Kelly Loeffler. Miren por favor.
Who pays tariffs?
Congressman, according to Harvard and the Richmond Fed, 80% of the tariffs are paid by the foreign countries where they originate. That's why the United States was on its heels for 50 years.
That would be like me saying, if you said, what color is my hair? I'd say I have long flowing red hair, right? Because it's complete BS, right? That's not true. Who pays tariffs are these small businesses who've been impacted, 42,600 on average last September. And then they pass the costs on to consumers. So before I sold my business, when Donald Trump started his tariffs last year, I started getting increases on aluminum sheets. I did engraving as one of the parts that I did. It's specialty printing. But I also got increases, by the way, on American-made walnut plaques because they decided they could also make money while they're doing the increased costs on tariffs. They could pass on some other costs. So that's part of the fun of being a small business, not a really, really, really rich, big business. But when you're a small business, that's the kind of stuff you have to juggle. So I did see the impact in invoices. Every single day, I would see those coming in, and we paid those extra costs. Yard sign wires for politicians. We made political signs for folks. We saw the steel costs increase because of the tariff. So I'm just saying, for the average small business, there's been a big impact. And the fact that you're talking to businesses and not hearing this, I'll tell you, it just bluntly, not as even a member of Congress, as a guy who's a small business who ran a business-to-business venture, I heard it all the time, and I still hear it all the time. And I sit down and meet with my small businesses in my community. So what can I say to them when I say the SBA administrator says foreign countries are paying tariffs, you just are imagining it or you're lying? Because they're not imagining it and they're not lying.
Well, Congressman, with all due respect, I'm going to set aside the reductive comments you made about small business success because every small business is a job.
So you're saying you'll take my time back. You're saying a real small venture doesn't matter if the bankruptcies are 50%. You only care about big business. Is that the new policy of the SBA?
A collision
unless
repair.
Donald Trump and his sons can invest in, it's not something you care about. Is that what you're saying?
A collision repair company. You voted against the working family tax cut, where that repairman, where that auto mechanic is not.
Oh, please! If you want to go there, I need 5 more minutes. That's you have no clue. Give me 5 more minutes, and I'll ask you questions about that.
Yeah, well,
I yield back.
This administration is fighting for the American worker.
Think about small business.
Ahora, sí quiero mostrarles este discurso completo del congresista Magazine porque fue muy impresionante. Quiero que le prestes mucha atención, por favor.
Mr. Speaker, in the last week, ICE agents shot and killed 2 more innocent people in broad daylight. In both cases, the people they shot and killed weren't even the people they were looking for. In both cases, they shot and killed people who were on their way to work in front of their families. In Houston last week, Lorenzo Salgado Arejo, a construction worker who has lived in the United States for 35 years, a husband with 3 children, no criminal record. He was driving to work with the lunch that his wife had packed for him and his brother riding in the passenger seat when ICE agents rammed his vehicle and shot him because they thought he was someone else. And then yesterday in Maine, Joan Sebastian Guerrero, 26 years old, legally authorized to work in the United States, legally authorized, shot and killed by ICE agents who thought he was somebody else, in front of his wife and his 3-year-old daughter, who screamed, wearing her bluey pajamas while she watched her father bleed to death. How many more innocent people have to be killed in broad daylight? How many more children have to watch their parents shot to death by masked men too cowardly to show their faces? When will this madness stop? When he took his position, Secretary Mullen said that his goal was to get the department off the front page of the news. Well, you're back on the goddamn front page now with 2 innocent people gunned down in broad daylight. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. It is total chaos. And you know what? In both of these shootings, in Texas and in Maine, none of the agents were wearing their body cameras. Congress gave them tens of millions of dollars for body cameras, and none of them were wearing them. Where's the accountability? And you want to know why we won't vote, why I won't vote to give funding to this lawless, reckless, dangerous agency? Mark my words, we are not going to be silent about what is happening. We are not going to forget until there is justice.
Y a continuación quiero mostrarles lo que pasó cuando tuvimos al presidente de la Reserva Federal, Kevin Warsh, testificando al congresista demócrata Gregory Meeks. Gregory Meeks estaba interrogando a Kevin Warsh y logró que Kevin dijera oficialmente que va a poner la ley por encima de Donald Trump y que no va a escuchar las amenazas de Donald Trump. Permítanme mostrarles este buen interrogatorio por parte del congresista Meeks aquí. Miren, por favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And congratulations, Mr. Chairman. You just jump into this because in your testimony, you talked about the Federal Reserve's, and I quote, rightful independence in the conduct of monetary policy, which is good. Now, as the Chairman Hill has indicated, I also do some foreign affairs work. And I'm very concerned about what's taking place in the Strait of Hormuz and rising cost of gas, because we know that when those prices go up at the pump, it gives higher transportation and energy cost, and they work their way through the economy, generally making groceries higher in household goods, et cetera. So it depends upon handling it. So if the administration's handling of the conflict with Iran contributes to another inflationary shock, will you make the decision you believe is in the best interest of the American people and the American economy in that rightful independent stance?
Congressman, that is always our commitment, to make the best decision we can, consistent with the remit and our understanding of the world. And as I said to the chairman at the outset, we'll deliver price stability.
So, and that's, still based upon what we've seen from the president thus far. Now, I just want to be clear, make sure that, because I got to be clear on this, that if the president publicly pressures you to pursue a different course than the one you believe is in the economic, that you believe the economic data supports, will you follow the president's wishes or follow the data?
My commitment to you is to follow the law and follow the data, follow our very best judgment.
And that's even if he publicly criticizes you for doing it. If you decide this is the way to go, this is what the data shows, and he publicly criticizes you and tells you how disappointed he's in you and all of that, will you still do what the data tells you to do?
I will, Congressman.
You ready for that?
I'm ready to follow the law, and I'm ready for the Fed to deliver on the expansive remit that you gave us. I'll make only one other note. We have a wide lens. We're interested in what's happening in the war. We're interested in what's happening in military conflicts around. We have to take that all in, but then we have to shut the door and make our very best decision. That's what we're going to do in a couple of weeks, and that's what we'll do in the remainder of my tenure.
Volviendo al interrogatorio de Dovell por un momento, permítanme compartir con ustedes cuando el congresista Steny Hoyer interrogó a Kelly Loeffler. Miren, por favor.
Have you received any directions from OMB at any time during the course of your administration at the SBA to not disperse funding that has been appropriated?
Well, we're working closely both internally and externally. So we work with OMB, we work with our internal political and career colleagues to ensure that the funds are going out as directed, as intended by Congress. and that they meet the law and that they meet the executive orders. And so we have continued to look at meeting all those objectives and making sure that the programs, I think small businesses would be interested to know that some of the programs that were lined up for funding were things like the Binational Institute for Human Development, which supports illegal aliens in Guatemala and Mexico.
Excuse me, Madam Administrator. I have limited time, and my question was
Society.
pretty simple, which I don't think you've answered. And that is, have you been directed at any point in time since you have been the administrator of the SBA by OMB and Mr. Vogt, not necessarily him personally, but OMB, to not expend money that had been appropriated by Congress?
I have been directed to follow the law, and in doing so, I'm following the White House executive orders. I'm working internally, and we're making sure that everything that you have directed to get out gets out. But we are not going to blindly write blank checks like the last administration did to the Chinese Mutual Aid Society.
I know.
That got $4
Let me
million
reclaim my time because my time is short. You didn't answer the question. I didn't ask you whether you have done things that are prudent to do. I asked you, have you been directed by either Mr. Vogt directly or OMB not to expend funds that were appropriated by the Congress of the United States? Now, you're avoiding, that's an either yes or no question.
I think I've been very clear that we are following all requirements to get
No, that's not very
funds
clear.
out. And I do not work directly on grant disbursements, and I'll be happy to have my team follow up with you to clarify. But all of the funding that we've committed to getting out, we are getting out. Let me be clear, the Biden administration did not get their money out.
Aquí tenemos más interrogatorios sobre Kelly Loeffler cerrando oficinas de la SBA en ciudades demócratas y estados demócratas y no en estados republicanos y ciudades republicanas, politizando evidentemente todo lo que pueda. Miren, por favor.
Now, with all due respect, you're closing up 8 cities around the country. Is that in terms of your reorganization to which the chairman referred? Is that accurate?
That's inaccurate.
Okay, what is accurate?
When I came in, we had 132 offices. I think people would be shocked to know that we had 132 offices, 29 of which had 0 or 1 employee in them.
Okay, are you closing offices?
Yes, we absolutely are.
Can you name me an office that you are closing that is in a blue city or blue district? One.
We don't classify them by blue cities.
Can you name one?
We are making several.
The president
changes
said
across
he
the country.
did consider the politics.
No, we're changing areas.
Can you name one, Madam Administrator?
I can name several. Yeah, I can.
And
I can tell you we have had to move out.
What
of
are they?
Los Angeles, Portland, New York, Chicago, Atlanta.
No, that were closed. Can you name me one that is scheduled to be closed that is not in a blue district?
Yeah, I'm sure I can. I'll be happy to get that district or city. We don't target them by blue or red. We
No, I
target
understand,
them
but
by,
it would be.
Is there anyone working in that office? Let me give you we had an office for 4 years that had no employees working in it. We didn't even have access. We
You ought to
couldn't
close
open
that.
it with the key.
Matter of fact, it
We're
was
closed.
closed if you had no people working in it.
We were
apparently.
paying, the taxpayers were paying for it. The taxpayers are now saving $32 million.
Madam Administrator, with all due respect, I've asked you
I'm here
two
to advocate for
direct
small businesses and
questions.
saving them
You have
money on
not
taxes.
answered either one of them. That's regrettable. I will send you some questions in writing. I would hope you would answer them. Thank you very much.
Luego escuchamos a la congresista de Lauro. Permítanme compartir con ustedes su interrogatorio. Miren, por favor.
I just see the process does seem to favor, and these are not my words. I can quote you, Judge Eaton. I mean, that's what I wish to say this to you. If you could get to us a rundown of the refunds, who is getting those refunds, the amount of the refunds, and their category is a large business, small business, or whatever it is. Who are the companies getting the trade refunds so that you can dispel what is public knowledge about these efforts, which you don't seem to know about? So the process seems to favor large companies with in-house customs experts, outside trade counsel, while smaller business often lack the resources. I want to ask you, does the SBA share that concern? I'm afraid I'm going to get the same answer about the thriving small businesses. Have SBA conducted any assessment of whether small businesses are disproportionately struggling to access tariff refunds compared to larger firms? Are you doing an assessment of that? It's yes or no?
No, ma'am.
You're not doing an assessment of what's happening
What
to
I
small
see every
business.
day is
Will you
reshoring
commit?
whole industry.
Will you commit to working with CBP to provide this committee with a report identifying how many small businesses have successfully received refunds and what are the barriers that remain?
I will commit to continuing to advancing the interests of small business.
No, this is CBP to provide this committee with a report. Can you get us a report?
We're frequently asked to deliver reports. These reports are not what my staff will be happy to meet with your staff.
This committee needs a report of what's happening.
I can tell you what's happening on the ground with small businesses.
Oh God, no, you can't. Small businesses do not have access to the same legal resources as Fortune 500 companies. Let me be clear, this isn't a question of whether or not someone supports or opposes tariffs. It's about ensuring that the small businesses that you represent and the manufacturers in Connecticut are treated fairly. Federal government owes them money. They shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get it back. It is that simple. Mr. Chairman, I requested a report. I hope the committee believes that we should get a report and understand what is happening with the tariff refunds for large businesses and small businesses. I yield back.
A continuación, quiero compartir con ustedes el interrogatorio de la congresista Velázquez al presidente de la Reserva Federal, Kevin Warsh. Pueden escuchar esto por ustedes mismos. Miren, por favor.
I would like to start with a straightforward, simple question. Do you work for Donald Trump? Yes or no?
If I'm permitted to say, we're an independent central bank. We're honored to be independent. Our independence came from you.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you. What steps would you take if the president or others in the administration target you or your fellow governors because he doesn't like how many of them are voting on interest rate policy?
So it's not my intuition to engage in hypotheticals, but I'll tell you this: the Supreme Court said
that's an easy way out.
The Supreme Court said that the Federal Reserve and the conduct of monetary policy is independent. To the extent there were questions about it, the courts answered those questions.
So what would you do?
I would continue to do my job.
Okay, good. Chair Walsh, do you agree that current monetary policy exists in an extremely polarized and politicized environment?
Outside the four walls of the Federal Reserve, there's no doubt a lot of politics. But my goal inside the central bank is for there to be no politics. To the extent there's politics there, we're going to get rid of them.
Well, I, along with many on my side, will say that the attempted firings of a sitting Fed governor and Fed chair in the central bank's 111-year history is quite the politicization and polarization of the Fed. Chair Walsh, at your nomination hearing a few months ago, you said, and I state, I am committed to ensuring that the conduct of monetary policy remains strictly independent. You just said that. Are you still committed to conducting independent monetary policy today?
Absolutely.
Given the current mistrust of government and the political environment surrounding your appointment, the decision to limit communications and offload Fed objectives to clandestine task forces with no clear transparency calls your motivations into question. Can you commit today to institute an explanatory framework that details the reasoning of the Fed's actions following policy changes?
I'm here today, Congressman, to do just that. And I think I've demonstrated in my first 6 or 7 weeks in office a commitment to independence and a commitment to reform. Those two are of common importance, and I'm going to deliver on both of them.
I'm glad to hear that.
Y luego, permítanme compartir con ustedes el interrogatorio del senador Van Hollen a estas juezas de la Corte Suprema, la jueza Kagan y la jueza Amy Coney Barrett. Miren, por favor.
On a related sort of question of public confidence, I want to ask you about prediction markets, because prediction markets have faced very little federal oversight. They're largely self-regulating. We've already seen insider trading by government officials in other branches and in the military. Supreme Court justices and their staff have access to similar information. They're not immune from this trend. Here are some of the event contracts that are currently being offered on Kashi. Who will be the next Supreme Court justice? Will Trump be held liable for January 6th in any court? Will the independence of the judiciary be weakened during Trump's term? Now, clearly, members of the Senate and Senate staff could have information that could be helpful to them in playing the prediction markets. The Senate actually has now adopted, as a matter of Senate rules, a prohibition on doing that. So my question to you is, will the court do the same, both for justices and for the staff of the Supreme Court?
That's already covered.
My understanding is it's already
covered because there's a prohibition on using information that you know within the court to make financial gain. And so,
and not just for justices, but for all employees of the court.
Okay, so it's your view that the current language of the rules already prohibits every member of the court staff and obviously the members of the court itself from engaging in prediction markets.
I mean, I think this is an incredibly important area. So if your charge to us is go back and look for any loopholes, we'll willingly take on.
Yeah, I would suggest you do
we don't want loopholes, Senator Van Hollen.
This is super important.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Well, there's legislation that's been, I think, just introduced in the House. So I think there may be a feeling that the current language may not be airtight. So if you could go back and look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Vaya, qué cosas tan impactantes, ¿verdad? Llevamos, ¿qué? 2 horas de audiencia de confirmación de Todd Blanche y creo que se ha registrado un número récord de mentiras en el Senado. Este hombre está haciendo y diciendo básicamente lo necesario para convertirse en el fiscal general de los Estados Unidos y todo se debe a la única verdad que dijo durante todo este proceso, algo que se le escapó accidentalmente y tiñó por completo el resto de la audiencia. Es allí donde quiero empezar porque esto es muy importante para entender lo que Todd Blanche pasó a decir y, bueno, a no decir sobre los archivos, el fondo de instrumentalización y las elecciones del 2020 y 2028. Vamos a profundizar en todo esto, pero primero quiero comenzar con esta admisión que hizo Todd Blanche al dejarlo escapar y que, insisto, explica el resto de lo que dijo. Miren, por favor.
Are you and President Trump friends?
I'm his lawyer, was his lawyer, and now I'm the Deputy Attorney General. So I met him as his criminal defense attorney. I'm not sure there's very many people who have ever had a criminal defense attorney who calls that person their friend. I now have a...
Well, let me put it this way. Are you enemies?
No, we're not enemies at all. No.
Soy su abogado, no fui. Él se corrigió a sí mismo, pero no soy su abogado. Eso es lo primero que piensa Todd Blanche porque lo es. Ese es su trabajo y siempre será conocido como el abogado de Donald Trump, como el fiscal general de los Estados Unidos. La lealtad y el compromiso con el culto está por encima de lo que valora Donald Trump. No le importa la competencia. Pete Hegseth es el secretario de defensa. Ni siquiera le importa si te presentas a trabajar. Kash Patel se pasa la mayor parte de las mañanas en un coma etílico. Lo único que le importa es que cuando te presentes lo hagas por Donald Trump y que mientas, evadas y no les dejes a los republicanos ni a los demócratas. Porque hubieron republicanos que presionaron a Todd Blanche, como vamos a ver más adelante, nada de lo que puedan hablar, y eso incluye los archivos sobre los cuales vimos a Todd Blanche esquivar preguntas. Miren, por favor.
Disclose those documents. Let me talk to you for a moment about the survivors who are in the room. There are 10 individuals who were exploited and abused by Mr. Epstein. They are here today. None of them have had a chance to speak to anyone in the department or FBI, though they've asked repeatedly. So can I get your word under oath that within the next 30 days, you will personally sit down with these 10 victims and hear their case in terms of what needs to be done by the Department of Justice?
Chairman, I appreciate them being here today. I also have somebody from my office who's spent her entire career working on cases like Mr. Epstein's. She's in charge of our task force investigating human trafficking. She's available to talk to them.
She can sit right next to you. She can sit right next to you when you meet with these survivors.
I have never said I will not meet with survivors.
Will you meet with these 10 survivors? I'm asking you on the record.
If they have lawyers, as you know, I'm prohibited from meeting directly with them. I have met with counsel for survivors, as has many people in the Department of Justice, over 30. But if they are represented by counsel, we will work with their counsel. If they don't have a lawyer, I will certainly make arrangements to make sure the right people at the Department of Justice meet with them. Absolutely.
Will you get it done within the next 30 days that each
I
of
will
these
get it done
survivors?
today, if that's necessary. I mean, my point is, there's somebody here who can meet with them today, get their information, and arrange to meet with them.
I think you ought to be in the room.
Pardon me?
I think you ought to be in the room because you ought to hear this. You have singular responsibility for these files. There's a delay in meeting the statutory requirement of disclosure. You were involved in that. I think you ought to be part of this.
I am definitely part of it, and I have been from day one.
And it will be done within the next 30 days?
I can keep on repeating myself, but I said it could get done as soon as today. It could have gotten done last week. We remain available to meet with any victim or their representative at any time.
Will you notify the committee when you've done this?
That would be prohibited by law if they're talking about an ongoing investigation.
I'm asking you if you'll notify the committee that you met with the survivors.
It depends on what they said. I'm not sure I'm allowed to notify you if there's an ongoing investigation.
Well, you're dancing on the head of a pin here.
I'm not dancing on any pin
You
at
have
all.
these survivors who have the courage to come before this committee, have the courage to tell their terrible stories, how they were exploited. Don't you think it's important that we have a prompt response by our government to these survivors?
Absolutely. And there will be a prompt response. My heart breaks for every survivor, every victim of Mr. Epstein. Absolutely. And I would love to prosecute anybody that did any harm to these
Will
victims.
you meet with them within the next 30 days? The last time I asked a question, you can say yes or no.
I can keep on answering it the same way. I can meet with them. My staff will meet with them. We have a staff member here
If you
today
can
who
meet with them, will you meet with them?
I'm not sure what you're looking for me to say. As I said,
Yes, is what I'm looking for.
there are, if they're represented by counsel, I'm not allowed to meet with them directly, as you know. I assure you, the FBI, who are experts in this space, prosecutors who are experts in this space, and me, if necessary, will absolutely meet with them. I promise you this.
I think it's
I will
necessary.
stay updated and know everything that's happening with any victim that has information about any other people that work with Epstein, that committed any crimes with Epstein. Absolutely.
Well, if you're truly committed to extraordinary transparency and you're willing to meet with these victims, I hope you will do it immediately or we're going to hold you to it.
Estas respuestas son terribles y la idea de que Todd Blanche no pueda reunirse con las víctimas es simplemente una tontería. Además, la idea de que hay algo que te detiene en estas investigaciones, como bueno, nos encantaría hablar con ellas, pero no podemos debido a las leyes, ya han violado leyes también, ha admitido haber violado leyes en torno a la ley de transparencia de los archivos de Jeffrey Epstein, así que es como que si esto es lo que te detiene, tal vez simplemente no debería de hacerlo, en otros ámbitos también, pero este es el tipo que está actuando como el abogado del presidente, no como el fiscal general, no como alguien que realmente está tratando de investigar el caso. Y por supuesto, surgieron más preguntas sobre los archivos que Todd Blanche no pudo responder, pero también hay preguntas sobre el fondo de dinero discrecional, ¿verdad? El mismo fondo del que vimos decir a Tom Tillis que si Todd Blanche no descartaba por completo, no votaría por él. Así que esto va a ser un gran problema, de verdad, un gran problema para Todd Blanche. Considerando más que todo que terminó diciendo esto. Miren, por favor.
You have refused to exclude January 6 rioters from your anti-weaponization fund. You have refused to put in writing that the slush fund is dead. Indeed, you signal to allies that payouts are still on track. You have vacated seditious conspiracy convictions against members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. You hired January 6 rioter Jared Wise, who had urged the mob to kill police officers. You scrubbed press releases about January 6 prosecutions and called the releases partisan propaganda. You denied that Trump encouraged any violence on January 6. You've cleaned house of every attorney who worked on a case related to Trump, and you've bragged that bringing justice for violent rioters meant that every one of them was either pardoned or had their sentence commuted. I hope that our colleagues who are concerned about what happened on January 6th take that into account. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
I would. almost everything the senator just said, and he's protected, he's allowed to lie, but almost everything he just said was absolutely false, okay? Starting with the fact that I have never said that any sort of violence against law enforcement is appropriate. I have never said that publicly. I have never said that in a speech, and I certainly do not believe it. I did not hire the person referenced. And that is, again, something that just happens not to be true. When I talk about what happened with the convicted January 6 defendants, I talk about what President Trump did. He has the absolute right to pardon anybody for any reason he sees fit, and every one of them got pardoned or commuted. I am not celebrating that. It is a fact. And the fact that my department had to take action in response to those pardons by dismissing some cases is exactly what I have to do under the law, and it's what I did. So that the narrative that the senator just suggested and put on me as something I believe is absolutely not true.
Since he accused me of lying personally, Mr. Chairman, let me ask that I put this series of concerns into a question for the record, and that you, under oath, one by one, tell me where there's a lie.
I'm happy to do that.
I'll get that to you.
I'm happy to do that. Absolutely.
Este tipo es un mentiroso terrible y entró en todo esto con mucha suficiencia. Le costó responder a las preguntas de estas personas, ha dado una especie de evasivas como respuestas a estas preguntas, pero esa es la expectativa de que pelees con estos progresistas, que los derribes, que digas que sus preguntas son una tontería, que son todas políticas y que intentes actuar para Donald Trump. Y por supuesto, es eso en lo que Todd Blanche ha pasado todo su tiempo, en nuestro gobierno, tratando de actuar para Donald Trump, pero esta realmente no es una buena actuación, ¿verdad? No es una actuación que convenza, no lo es. Nadie cree realmente que Todd Blanche deba de ocupar este puesto de fiscal general de los Estados Unidos. Simplemente no es una buena imagen para él, porque recordamos lo que está pasando ahí, ¿verdad? Nadie se está olvidando del hecho de que Todd Blanche fue y se reunió con Ghislaine Maxwell, de lo cual no sé por qué no hemos hablado más, de hecho. Ciertamente, bueno, lo hemos hecho aquí, siendo que los medios de comunicación tradicionales han ignorado en gran medida el hecho de que ella tiene un cachorro. Toma clases de cerámica, juega videojuegos y pide DoorDash en su hotel de prisión, ya saben, prisión resort de 5 estrellas. Tal vez eso sea algo de lo que queremos hablar más. No lo sé, parece bastante relevante, pero sabemos cuál es el trabajo de Todd Blanche. Es muy obvio, y es porque, bueno, eso se desmoronó. Porque incluso los republicanos se dan cuenta. Vieron al senador Kennedy continuar presionando un poco más sobre los archivos. Todd Blanche simplemente nos mintió y mintió y mintió a todos nosotros. Miren, por favor.
Yes.
Other than to himself, who, if anyone else, did Mr. Epstein traffic young women to?
There's from what we learned, from what we know. So when we know, I mean, what's in the FBI files and what's in the DOJ files, we did not identify evidence. And by we, I mean career prosecutors, not me, not my leadership, but career prosecutors in New York and career prosecutors in Florida who worked this case hard, did identify other participants, some of whom, as has been discussed, were also victims themselves of Mr. Epstein. But we did not have evidence, as of now, of other men who were that were trafficked, that Epstein helped traffic. That does not mean it didn't happen, and I want to be clear about that. It just means that we have evidence that the FBI gathered and that the Department of Justice gathered, and that's the body of work that we have to work with, which is why I said earlier, if there's anybody out there, victim or otherwise, that has information, I beg them to come forward.
Okay.
Sabemos que eso simplemente no es cierto, y esto es otro gran ejemplo de que Todd Blanche no hará nada, ni una sola cosa sobre los archivos, y solo va a trabajar para proteger a Donald Trump, porque como dijo al principio de su audiencia, él únicamente es su abogado, él es el abogado de Donald Trump. Entonces, ¿por qué tendríamos la expectativa de que hiciera otra cosa que no fuera servir a Donald Trump? Esta gente quiere que creamos que el gobierno existe para proteger a Donald Trump, para proteger el dinero en el bolsillo de Donald Trump y en los bolsillos de sus idiotas e inútiles hijos e hijas, también de su esposa. Esto es lo que quiere que creamos, y cada vez que ves a un Todd Blanche hablar de ser el abogado de Donald Trump, cada vez que lo ves como que riéndose, cada vez que lo ves como que rindiéndole pleitesía allá arriba diciendo que es fantástico y que nunca le pediría hacer nada ilegal, montando esa actuación están vendiendo esta mentira tanto como cualquier otra cosa. Pero sabemos que no es verdad, sabemos que hubo más tráfico de personas y por eso esa es una admisión de que no hará su trabajo justo ahí. Porque no lo va a investigar, porque no les importa, no les interesa quién salga herido, no les interesa estar violando la ley. Y esa es la palabra clave ahí, violar la ley. No que la violaron, no que lo hicieron una vez y siguieron adelante, no, continuaron haciéndolo y esta gente tendrá que ser procesada. Eso es lo que me gustaría escuchar más adelante también, decir, señor, no sabe lo que va a hacer, señor. Y eso es lo que me gustaría escuchar de más demócratas también, que ellos digan, señor, ¿no sabe que va a ser procesado? ¿Cómo se siente al respecto? Y simplemente dejarlo muy claro y muy público, porque esa es la única manera que tenemos para, bueno, mantener a esta gente a raya. Donald Trump va a dirigir un discurso a la nación en la que afirmará que la elección del 2020 fue robada. Donald Trump va a tratar de decir al mismo tiempo que Joe Biden era tanto un títere senil manipulado por el Estado profundo, como también el hombre con la capacidad de controlar tanto de lo que ocurre dentro de nuestras elecciones, que fue capaz de amañarlas mientras que Donald Trump era presidente. Las dos ideas no tienen sentido juntas. Y ciertamente tampoco por sí solas. Donald Trump también dirá que los senadores Jon Ossoff y Raphael Warnock también son ilegítimos, que sus elecciones fueron fraudulentas, a pesar de que Georgia, en ese momento, tenía un gobernador republicano y un secretario de Estado republicano. Y por supuesto, Donald Trump era el presidente. Así que con eso en la puerta para en estos días, ¿creen que el nominado de Donald Trump para ser el director de Inteligencia Nacional diría algo diferente sobre la elección del 2020? Por supuesto que no, y fue humillante. Tanto que Donald Trump tuvo que cerrar todo después de que lo atraparan al hombre. Donald Trump fue atrapado con las manos en la masa intentando imponer esta mentira. Quiero empezar con este fragmento humillante antes de que entremos en el cierre de todo y hablemos más sobre Donald Trump y las mentiras electorales que va a tratar de promover. Antes de llegar al cierre, comencemos con lo que nos llevó aquí.
Can you tell me why Joe Biden was certified as the winner of the 2020 election?
I really, I'm going back to my constitutional law here, but I don't want to continue to have a debate about this, but I believe he had the most electoral votes.
So he won the election.
He followed our process, had the most electoral votes, was declared the winner, and
who has the most electoral votes? Is it the person that wins or the person that loses?
I think that's your characterization. I'm not going to continue to do this.
The reason why we struggle with this, and I think it's especially important in the job you're nominated for, is because it seems that folks who are nominated for these positions just fundamentally refuse to disagree with something the president says. And the problem I have with this is he isn't in the room today. You're going to be in a room with him many times. And at times, you should have a difference of opinion. And if you can't disagree with him when he's not in the room, are you going to be able to disagree with him when you're sitting across from him in the Oval Office or the Situation Room? That's what I struggle with, because this job is different. This job, it's not about softening the edges when the truth is unpleasant. It's about delivering information and making sure the president understands that information. And by the way, people risk their lives to get this information. And if it's not transmitted to the president, if he doesn't understand it, I mean, there's going to be disagreements. We expect that. But I really struggle with this, especially in your position, because you can't disagree with him on this, because he doesn't like the fact that he lost in 2020. As you said, Joe Biden was certified because he got the most electoral votes. That means he won, but you still refuse to say that.
And I was sitting at the SEC when this occurred, and I can tell you that maybe people worked harder, but I don't think anybody I know worked harder to make an effective transition to my successor at the SEC.
Así que esto fue humillante. La incapacidad de decir que Joe Biden ganó la elección del 2020 debería de ser no solo un motivo de descalificación para cualquier futuro nominado de Donald Trump, sino que cada uno de los nominados judiciales que fueron colocados en un tribunal deberían de ser llevados de vuelta al Congreso y obligados a responder por su incapacidad para decir que Joe Biden ganó la elección del 2020. Nosotros deberíamos humillarlos una vez más y luego deberíamos de destituir a todos estos jueces. Cualquiera que no pudiera decir que Joe Biden no ganó la elección del 2020 no debería de ocupar un tribunal federal. Punto. Final de la discusión. Eso no es difícil y ninguna de estas personas deberían estar en el gabinete, pero ahora mismo lo están. Así es, lo están. Van a estar en el gabinete porque eso es lo que Donald Trump quiere. Él quiere lealtad a esta mentira sobre el fraude electoral y esa es la mentira que va a intentar promover en estos días. Así que para asegurarse de que esa mentira no pueda ser humillada más por esta ridícula audiencia, simplemente cerraron las cosas.
Clayton, for your testimony today.
Mr. Chairman, do we have time for any follow-up questions?
No. There's not second round. The Capitol Police will receive the annoying or remove the annoying lunatic from the crowd. I apologize to lunatics for comparing that guy to them. Mr. Clayton, thank you for your testimony today. As a reminder, we expect to have a vote next week. Members, questions for the records will be due today at 5:30. Mr. Clayton, I trust you can respond to those no later than 5:30 on Friday. This hearing is adjourned.
Sin preguntas de seguimiento, nada. Estamos cansados de esto. Cansados de que nos hagan preguntas sobre lo que afirmamos que es lo más importante que ha sucedido en la historia de Estados Unidos. Estamos cansados de que nos cuestionen sobre nuestras supuestas afirmaciones de fraude electoral. Es muy divertido que se molesten tanto por ello cuando intentan anular la elección. Ahora están tratando de dar $2.000 millones a las personas que asaltaron el Capitolio. Es de lo único que se quejan, lloriquean, protestan y se lamentan. Y luego les hacen una pregunta sencilla al respecto y no solo se desmoronaron, sino que se enojaron. Se enojaron contigo por hacerlo. Me parece una locura. Es como Haley Steven ahora mismo en Michigan. Este es un pequeño paréntesis, quien está recibiendo $50 millones del dinero del IPAC para intentar vencer a Abdul El Sayed. Y si estás en Michigan, por favor, ayúdalo. Dónale dinero porque lo necesita. Por favor, haz llamadas, por favor, hazte voluntario. Si eres de Michigan, busca un buen candidato, de verdad. Abdul El Sayed es bueno. Pero esa gente como que recibe $50 millones de dinero del IPAC y dice, ¿por qué estos progresistas siempre quieren hablar de Israel? Es como, bueno, en primer lugar, están cometiendo un genocidio. En segundo lugar, nos arrastraron a una guerra. Y en tercer lugar, están financiando tu campaña. Y ocurre exactamente lo mismo con estas afirmaciones sobre las elecciones todos los días. Donald Trump, otra vez, bueno, francamente, la elección del 2020 fue robada y fue una estafa. Y luego simplemente decimos, bueno, ¿cuál fue la estafa exactamente, Donald? Dímelo. Algún republicano, por favor, responda a la pregunta. Y ellos dicen, ¿por qué preguntarías eso? ¿Por qué dirías eso? No voy a hablar de eso. Sí estás hablando de esto. De hecho, es de lo único que hablas. Sin embargo, no pueden responder ninguna pregunta. ¿Alguna persona les sorprendió esto en absoluto? Estas personas son tan débiles intelectualmente, simplemente se desmoronan por completo bajo cualquier tipo de escrutinio. Y vimos que eso ocurrió otra vez en esa audiencia, lo cual fue bastante fantástico de ver y deleitable. Cuando el senador Jon Ossoff terminó haciendo esto, y Dios mío, qué forma tan severa en que Jon Ossoff le habla a estas personas, que es a la vez desprecio, asco y odio, pero también es como que si los tuviera completamente fijados en sus objetivos, como si estuviera la mira en todo, como que se tuviera la mira sobre ellos. Él es como, estoy a punto de destrozarte, con este acento sureño, porque sí, es sureño, y voy a hablar despacio para que todos sepan que eres un idiota, y que yo tengo el control aquí, y que todo va a estar muy bien. ¿Estás preparado para ser humillado frente a la nación? Ni siquiera me importa, soy Jon Ossoff. Así es como más o menos es Jon Ossoff. Y vamos a hacer esto de todos modos. Me encanta poder hablar de esto, me encanta poder explicarles esto. Y si les gusta tanto como a mí, van a disfrutar los próximos 5 minutos de Jon Ossoff hablando sobre este tema. Miren, por favor.
Did the President of the United States pardon a convicted narco-trafficker?
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
I'm not going to do this with you.
This is a job interview. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee. Yes, you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee?
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
Like I said, I'm not going to get into that with you.
But you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee.
Is anything that I just said not honest or forthright?
Yes, you're not being honest or forthright. Who won the 2020
I think I've answered
election?
the question. We can keep doing this.
Well, we're going to keep doing it because you're not being honest and
No,
forthright
I'm
with
not
the
going to
committee.
engage in the theater,
It's a simple question, Mr. Clayton.
and I've answered
Who
it.
won the 2020 presidential election?
I've answered it.
You're here asking for the support of senators to lead America's intelligence community. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with this committee and with the American public, but you refuse to answer a simple matter of fact about the 2020 election. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
Then answer the question. Who won the
I have
2020
answered-
election?
I have answered the question.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer? You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election,
No,
but you asked to lead America's intelligence community? Isn't it humiliating to be unable to answer this question, to have to indulge the president's delusions? We know, you know, everybody in this room knows the truthful answer to that question. Why can you not give it?
I think I gave you the answer.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid in Georgia earlier this year?
You discussed that with me yesterday in your office.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid earlier this year?
You brought it to me, my attention.
What is going
yesterday.
on here? You've said at the beginning of this you have an obligation to be
No,
honest and
you're
forthright
saying
with the
it-
committee.
no,
I'm
you're-
asking a
you're-
very simple question. Are you
Actually, no,
aware
you're-
that Director
you're
Gabbard was
asking
present
me-
at the Fulton County raid earlier this
I-
year? Yes or no? Are you aware?
I was.
You won't answer that question either.
I just said I was made aware of it by you yesterday.
The first time you learned that Director Gabbard was present at that raid was in my office yesterday?
It was the first time that, in my recollection, I've thought about it recently. Now, was I aware of it before?
What?
You brought it to my attention yesterday.
Okay.
I had not
So
thought.
you had not known
I had
until...
not thought about it until you brought it to my attention yesterday.
Your answers lack credibility. Your testimony lacks credibility. You're being evasive and you're not being candid or forthright. And everybody across the country is going to watch this and know that. Are you aware that former Director Gabbard testified that her presence at the raid was, quote, requested by the president?
I'm not aware of that until now.
Okay, you are now aware of that.
Yeah.
Are you aware that members of this committee are already probing Director Gabbard's potential misconduct in this matter?
No, I'm not privy to your probe into.
Are you aware that the General Counsel and Deputy General Counsel of your office have already provided testimony to this committee regarding this matter?
No.
If the White House Chief of Staff or the President asks you to travel somewhere across the United States and oversee the execution of a domestic search warrant on a sensitive election facility, will you do it? Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate for the Director of National Intelligence?
That's a hypothetical.
We all know it's not appropriate
Senator
for the
Ossoff,
Director
your
of
time has
National
expired.
Intelligence. Will you answer the question?
Your time has expired.
Will you give him the opportunity to answer the question? Is this not material right now, sir? Is it appropriate for the Director of National Intelligence to oversee the execution of domestic search warrants at sensitive election facilities? Yes or no?
I think you're asking me, as you just said in your first comment to me.
Yes or no, is it appropriate?
Look,
No?
you are asking me to comment on a matter that you just said was under investigation.
No, I'm asking you.
Okay, Senator Ossoff, your time is
Esto es maravilloso. El desprecio que Jon Ossoff siente por estas personas es intelectualmente riguroso, pero también es pero muy asombroso. Es interesante. Jon debería de postularse para la presidencia, la verdad. Sé que la mayor ya, sé que él ama ser senador, pero yo estoy seguro de que Jon Ossoff está hecho para ser presidente. Tiene madera de presidente y todo el mundo se lo está pidiendo. Todo el mundo se lo pide. Donald Trump está en pánico debido a su nominado para convertirse en el director de inteligencia nacional, un sujeto llamado Jake Clinton, quien actualmente se desempeña como fiscal de los Estados Unidos para el Distrito Sur de Nueva York. Simplemente se congeló y se desmoronó por completo bajo presión durante una audiencia en el Senado. Fue acribillado a preguntas e interrogado por el senador demócrata Jon Ossoff. Permítame mostrarles lo que pasó cuando el senador Jon Ossoff hizo una pregunta básica, muy básica. ¿Quién ganó la elección del 2020? Observen cómo la elección de Donald Trump literalmente se desmorona, se queda en silencio y simplemente se congela. Miren, por favor.
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
I'm not going to do this with you.
This is a job interview. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee. Yes, you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee.
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
Like I said, I'm not going to get into that with you.
But you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee.
Is anything that I just said not honest or forthright?
Yes, you're not being honest or forthright. Who won the 2020
I think I've answered
election?
the question. We can keep doing this.
Well, we're going to keep doing it because you're not being honest and forthright
I'm
with
not
the
going to
committee.
engage in the theater.
It's a simple question, Mr. Clayton.
And I've answered.
Who won the 2020 presidential election?
I've answered it.
You're here asking for the support of senators to lead America's intelligence community. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with this committee and with the American public, but you refuse to answer a simple matter of fact about the 2020 election. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
Then answer the question. Who won the
have
2020 election?
I have answered the question.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer? You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election,
No,
but you asked to lead America's intelligence community? Isn't it humiliating to be unable to answer this question, to have to indulge the president's delusions? We know, you know, everybody in this room knows the truthful answer to that question. Why can you not give it?
I think I gave you the answer.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard...
Más interrogatorio aquí por parte del senador Jon Ossoff a Jake Clinton. Miren, por favor.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid in Georgia earlier this year?
You discussed that with me yesterday in your office.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid earlier this year?
You brought it to me, my attention.
What is going
yesterday.
on here? You've said at the beginning of this you have an obligation to be honest
you-
and
you're
forthright
saying
with the
it-
committee.
no,
I'm
you're-
asking a
you're-
very simple question. Are you
Actually, no,
aware
you're-
that
you're-
Director
you're
Gabbard was
asking
present
me-
at the Fulton County raid earlier this year? Yes or no? Are you aware?
I was.
You won't answer that question either.
I just said I was made aware of it by you yesterday.
The first time you learned that Director Gabbard was present at that raid was in my office yesterday?
It was the first time that, in my recollection, I've thought about it recently. Now, was I aware of it before?
What?
You brought it to my attention yesterday. I had not.
So
thought,
you had not known
I had
until...
not. I had not thought about it until you brought it to my attention yesterday.
Your answers lack credibility. Your testimony lacks credibility. You're being evasive and you're not being candid or forthright. And everybody across the country is going to watch this and know that. Are you aware that former Director Gabbard testified that her presence at the raid was, quote, requested by the president?
I'm not aware of that until now.
Okay, you are now aware of that.
Yeah.
Y luego el senador demócrata, por cierto, Jon Ossoff, continúa acribillando a Jake Clinton sobre el indulto de Donald Trump a Juan Orlando Hernández, uno de los capos del narcotráfico más importantes de todo el mundo, en toda la historia, de hecho, que trabajó con el cártel de Sinaloa, trabajó con el Chapo, introdujo enormes cantidades de, ya saben, estas sustancias a Estados Unidos y luego para que Donald Trump continúe lanzando estos golpes de estado silenciosos en el país del hemisferio occidental. Donald Trump indultó a Juan Orlando Hernández. Miren, por favor.
You have an obligation to be honest and forthright with this committee, correct?
Yes.
And is it the case in the Juan Orlando Hernandez case that the President of the United States pardoned a man who had worked with the Sinaloa cartel to facilitate massive narco trafficking into the United States?
I don't remember the specifics of that case.
He was
but
convicted in your district.
He was convicted.
Yeah.
We convict
Right.
a lot of people for a lot of drugs.
Convicted of narco trafficking, yes?
I believe so.
No, so at massive scale, yes?
Well, you're telling me what I know. That's kind of, he was, I believe, look, I'll take your word for it. He was a convicted narco trafficker.
Did the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, pardon a convicted narco trafficker?
I believe we just discussed that. The president provided a pardon, yes.
Yes or no? Did the President of the
think
United States pardon a convicted narco trafficker?
Yes.
Mr. Clayton, for your testimony today.
Mr. Chairman, do we have time for any follow-up questions?
No. They're not second round. The Capitol Police will receive the annoying or remove the annoying lunatic from the crowd.
Mr. Clayton is aiding Israel in laundering money through World Liberty Financial and the digital asset infrastructure. He's committing no hit.
I apologize to lunatics for comparing that guy to them. Mr. Clayton, thank you for your testimony today. As a reminder, we expect to have a vote next week. Members, questions for the records will be due today at 5:30. Mr. Clayton, I trust you can respond to those no later than 5:30 on Friday. This hearing is adjourned.
Pero luego hubo personas como el senador King que dijeron, no, queremos saber sus respuestas a estas preguntas básicas. Responda, por favor. Miren, por favor.
So I want to ask a follow-up question to the Vice Chairman. Who won the 2020 election?
I've answered that question. I'm not going to get into that.
You have not
anymore.
answered that question. Could you answer the question? Who won the 2020 election? Pretty simple question.
Yeah, I said I'm.
So it's A or it's two.
My answer. No, I'm going to give you the same answer. The answer to the chairman was, he asked me if I was an election denier. I am not an election denier. Joe Biden was certified as
we all know Joe
president.
Biden
He went through his process. We went through our electoral process, and I can tell you that I was in my seat at the SEC, and
I'm just
worked
asking
hard
a
for the
really
transition.
simple question. Who won the 2020 election?
As I said to you, we went through our processes, and Joe Biden became the president of the United States. And that's
not an answer to the question of who. I'm asking one more time.
Okay.
Who won the 2020 election?
I'm not, this is like, I'm here to talk about my qualifications.
One of your qualifications is you told us you're going to tell the truth to power, and you won't answer a very simple question.
I think I've answered it many times.
You have not answered it.
Okay.
Esto no es algo objetivo que estoy diciendo justo aquí. ¿Quién querría que este tipo lidere la comunidad de inteligencia esencialmente? Es decir, sabemos que hace unas noches Donald Trump sostuvo una reunión. Según el taquígrafo personal de Donald Trump, Barack Rabbit de Axios, Donald Trump sostuvo una reunión hace unas noches en la sala de crisis de la Casa Blanca para discutir planes de una nueva ola de ataques masivos y devastadores en contra de Irán, los cuales serán más extensos que los bombardeos que actualmente tienen lugar en el área del estrecho de Hormuz. Cabe señalar que Irán afirma que más de 30 personas en Irán ya han muerto a causa de estos ataques por parte de los Estados Unidos. Irán afirma que Estados Unidos está atacando infraestructura civil como instalaciones de procesamiento de trigo, instalaciones petroquímicas y otra infraestructura civil crítica. El régimen de Donald Trump y el SETCOM niegan eso. Sin embargo, Irán ha dejado muy claro que, cortará todo tránsito. Este fue el video que hice, creo que hace 3 videos atrás, hacia adentro y hacia afuera en el Mar Rojo con su control de huites o con su alianza con los huites en Yemen en caso de que el régimen de Donald Trump continúe con la escalada. Irán dice que ese es su próximo paso. Cerrará el estrecho de Bab al-Mandeb en el Mar Rojo, de la misma manera que el estrecho de Hormuz está cerrado en este momento en el Golfo Pérsico. Y si solo echan un vistazo al tráfico marino, pueden ver que los únicos barcos que están saliendo ahora mismo van a través de la ruta dirigida por el Cuerpo de la Guardia Revolucionaria Islámica, el IRGC, y no hay otro tráfico en el estrecho de Hormuz. Ahora, ¿qué está haciendo el régimen de Donald Trump? Bueno, pues muy de mañana. las fuerzas del Comando Central de Estados Unidos lanzaron otra ola de ataques en contra de Irán. Como lo expresa el CENTCOM, los ataques están diseñados para degradar aún más las capacidades militares de las fuerzas iraníes. Pero como les compartí también videos atrás, las capacidades de Irán no han sido degradadas. Están atacando más fuerte que nunca en Kuwait, en Jordania, en Bahrein, en Fujairah, en este oleoducto de los Emiratos Árabes Unidos que están tratando de construir para evitar el estrecho de Hormuz. Han habido ataques, ya saben, más profundo en el Golfo Pérsico. Irán está enviando el mensaje de que cualquier esfuerzo por intentar evitar el estrecho de Hormuz a través del oleoducto, a través de los Emiratos Árabes Unidos o a través de otras rutas para intentar desviarlo, ya saben, lejos del estrecho de Hormuz, ahí es donde Irán va a estar atacando y muchos petroleros están diciendo que simplemente no van a ir a hacer eso. Así que el transporte marítimo fuera del estrecho de Hormuz ha llegado a un cierre total, tal como he venido advirtiendo. Las reservas estratégicas de los Estados Unidos se siguen agotando, así que Donald Trump también acaba de publicar hace unos días una declaración diciendo que Irán acaba de llamarlo, que quieren hacer supuestamente un trato y luego hizo que el mercado de valores subiera. No estoy inventando esto, no es una mentira. No es una parodia. Donald Trump dijo que Irán quiere hacer un trato, que han llamado, que realmente quieren hacer un trato con Estados Unidos y eso hizo que el mercado de valores subiera debido a esa llamada. Ahora, el portavoz del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores de Irán dijo: las Fuerzas Armadas de la República Islámica de Irán han demostrado que cualquier agresión en contra del territorio iraní definitivamente se encontrará como una respuesta recíproca. No tenemos planes de negociaciones en este momento y estamos enfocados en la defensa. El memorando de entendimiento es un conjunto de obligaciones mutuas. Y en caso de una violación, por otra parte, nosotros también nos vamos a abstener de implementar nuestras obligaciones. Este es un principio y seguirá el mismo camino en el futuro. A lo cual Donald Trump respondió hace unos días intentando cooptar la fama de Taylor Swift diciendo que el misterioso perro de Swift y Kells debutó en el aeropuerto de Donald Trump en West Palm y Donald Trump dice: ¡qué genial! Además, mientras que el pueblo estadounidense sufre, el secretario del Tesoro, Scott Benson, dice: mientras Estados Unidos conmemora 250 años de independencia, la Casa de la Moneda de Estados Unidos comenzará a acuñar una nueva moneda de oro de $1 para honrar el legado perdurable de la libertad y el símbolo duradero del patriotismo, con el rostro de Donald Trump claramente en ella. Están haciendo una moneda de oro de $1. La ley federal requiere que un presidente esté muerto durante al menos 2 años antes de aparecer en una moneda de Estados Unidos. Pero el Tesoro dice: estamos haciendo una excepción porque esta es una moneda conmemorativa, aunque puede ser utilizada. Mientras tanto, el secretario de Defensa, Pete Hegseth, está bloqueando el ascenso de 7 oficiales superiores de la Marina, incluyendo a 5 mujeres y personas, de color, sin explicar públicamente por qué. Y tienen a Laura Ingraham en el medio de comunicación del régimen estatal que se hacen llamar Fox diciendo: salió un informe de CNBC y listaron que los 10 peores estados para vivir en el 2026 son estados que ganó Donald Trump y hay muchas empresas entrando a estos estados. Pero es el peor lugar para vivir. ¿Cómo podría ser que si las empresas están entrando ahí, la gente esté sufriendo? Tal vez sea porque la gente está siendo tratada como una absoluta basura y explotando estas áreas. Estás muy cerca de entenderlo, ¿verdad? Miren por favor este clip de Laura.
Now check out this recent list. 650 CEOs were polled and they rated the best states in which to do business. The top 10, including Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, are Republican. They're run by Republicans except Virginia, which is at number 10, and North Carolina, kind of a purple state, at number 5. So money and people, resources, are pouring into red states. So how do the socialists brush this off? Well, they do so either by ignoring it or distorting the data or with a little help from their friends. This CNBC report just comes out. They listed the 10 worst states to live in for 2026. All the states on this list, okay, Trump won. Every state except Georgia in 2020. And the list included 4 of the top 10 states for business. How does that make any sense? Well, they had kind of a weird calculus there, but this is obviously a blatant effort to dismiss and denigrate more conservative states. But it's really nothing new.
Y ahí lo tienen, amigos. Esto es lo que está pasando ahora.